Welcome to the Accidental Manager from Expert to Leader. We're going to start today's webinar with just a quick reflection. And I want you to look at the reality that affects nearly every single person who's ever transitioned from a technical role into a management role. If you take a look on screen, you'll see two very distinct columns. On the left, we have box A, doing the work. This is our zone of technical kind of excellence, the things we went to university or trained for, the data, our code, our hard kind of deliverables. And then on the right, we have box B, leading the people. And this is that human element, managing expectations, coaching, decoding the workplace behaviours of other people around us, our team members. And here's my question for you. I would just want you to take a step back and do an honest kind of 3-second audit of your average working week right now. What is your percentage split between box A and box B? And just look at it in terms of a 70-30, 30-70, 50-50 kind of split. For the vast majority of us in the world today, the numbers tell a very specific kind of story. We are spending an overwhelming amount of energy inside box A, doing tasks while trying to squeeze the massive responsibility of leading human beings into whatever percentage is left over. And that is the exact definition of the accidental manager trap. And again, just a quick kind of reflection. Did you find yourself being promoted because you were absolutely brilliant in box A, but when you did get promoted, there was no or very little kind of support to help you to excel in box B? Or perhaps it might be that you've seen other people being promoted in similar kind of circumstances where they haven't been given that support and development to help them transition into their new role. And that's exactly why management engagement declines, because trying to fit those human variables into technical boxes can be so exhausting for the manager. And today we're going to try and change that. And we're going to be introducing you to the Jigsaw Discovery Behavioural Framework to give you a concrete visual framework for box B. We're going to help to turn the soft skills of leadership into something that is just as tangible and structured as technical skills. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle MacArthur Morgan. I'm the founding partner and creator of the Jigsaw Discovery Tool. And I started my career in the hospitality sector. And then about 26 years or so ago, I actually moved across and transitioned into learning and development. And my work has taken me far and wide over that time, working in organisations throughout the UK, but also in the UAE, Europe, USA, in both public and corporate worlds. Academically, I have a degree in psychology, and then for the last 18 years, I've been a student of neuroscience, following, studying the latest research and looking at what we can actually learn and how we can apply it into the real world of work. The webinar today is designed to bridge that gap between doing and leading, to help you move beyond the to-do list, to take a step back from doing so you can start leading, freeing up your time, reducing stress levels. We're also going to be looking at how to remove some of that guesswork from daily interactions by using a clear visual framework to help us understand why people do the things they do, why they react the way that they do. And then how to speak a language that everyone understands by flexing our own communication style to ensure that messages land effectively with every member of your team. And then by gaining the soft skills to handle the conflict and the delegation with ease, managers will find that their roles become more rewarding and far less draining. Transitioning from doing to leading is fraught with challenges, and we'll directly address this. The technical trap, feeling the need to have all the answers rather than empowering others. Why your clear instructions are being misunderstood by different team members. The engagement gap, how we can re-energise both ourselves and team members when the pressure is on. And that moving past the discomfort of having those difficult conversations, that anxiety feedback, as we call it. As usual, the webinar is divided into chapters. Today, 3 chapters. In chapter 1, we're going to be looking at what is going on in the brain of a manager who has to make the shift from expert to leader, and why that box B can feel so hard. In chapter 2, we'll look at how using a behavioural framework such as the Jigsaw discovery tool can help to demystify complex human instructions, interactions and relationships. And in chapter 3, we'll focus upon transitioning from solving problems to supporting people. So now that we have seen the reality, let's explore why forcing ourselves into box B causes such a dramatic drop in manager engagement. It isn't a lack of effort on the manager's part. It's a matter of basic human neuroscience. When a manager is working within their technical expertise, whether that's analysing financial data, writing code, auditing a system, the brain is operating largely within a region called the basal ganglia. This is the brain's autopilot habit centre. Because they are highly skilled and experienced in this area, the brain processes these tasks using minimal metabolic energy. It feels satisfying, predictable, and structurally comfortable. But when they step into a people management role, then they're forced out of this low energy autopilot zone and straight into their prefrontal cortex, or PFC. The PFC is responsible for complex cognitive behaviour, decision making, problem solving, and navigating social interactions. But here's the catch. The PFC has very limited supply of energy, and it burns through energy like fuel in a sports car. Every time we have to figure out why a team member is not motivated or try to navigate an unexpected conflict, then the brain is working in overdrive, consuming massive amounts of glucose and oxygen. And without a proper behavioural toolkit to streamline this processing, the brain simply gets exhausted. And that exhausted state is what we call manager burnout, and it's when declining engagement occurs. But it goes even deeper. Our brains are essentially wired with one primary goal: to minimise threat and maximise reward. And to our survival-driven brains, social threats in the workplace, such as an awkward conversation, giving that critical kind of feedback, or when team frictions and fallouts occur, then these are all processed in the same neural pathways as physical pain. So when we have to give, let's say, tough feedback or handle a team member who's constantly pushing back, then our amygdala registers that social friction as a literal threat. You may experience your heart might notice your heart rate climbing a little. And there's an instinct to slide into a threat response, fight, flight, or freeze. In the workplace, flight or freeze looks like procrastination. We avoid those difficult conversations. We start slipping back into the comfort of our technical tasks where it feels safe. If no one has ever given you an objective toolkit to decode these social variables, you're essentially trying to navigate a neurological minefield by trial and error. This is exactly why we cannot rely on instinct alone to lead people. Instinct tells our brain to protect itself and stay in the technical comfort zone. So, to successfully move from expert to leader without draining our cognitive battery, we need a system that converts those complex, unpredictable human behaviours into clear, structured, and recognisable patterns. We need to save our prefrontal cortex from burning out. And that is exactly where the Jigsaw Discovery Behavioural Framework comes in. Think of it a little bit like an external hard drive for your brain's social processing. It takes the guesswork out of human behaviour and turns the messy variables of people management into an interactive visual framework. In our next chapter, we'll take a look at how it works, but first let's stop for a minute's reflection. Before we move forward and look at the Jigsaw tool itself, I want us to deliberately put our brains into neutral for just 60 seconds. In neuroscience, we know that to actually build new neural pathways and embed the learning, the brain needs an active moment of reflection. We know that to actually build those new neural pathways and embed that learning, we have to be able to connect new theory to old memories. So just take a look at the question on screen. Take a deep breath and just let your mind sit with it. Think back to that moment over the past few working days where you truly felt exhausted by your team, or you deliberately avoided an uncomfortable conversation, or you simply found yourself retreating into your technical workload to escape the ongoing people drama. So I suggest that you'd like to stop the recording at this point and just take a quiet moment. Just let your brain make that connection. So, recognizing the difference between a high energy cognitive task and a biological threat response is the absolute foundation of moving beyond the accidental manager trap. So, now that you've diagnosed what goes on inside your own brain, let's look at the Jigsaw behavioural framework, which has been designed to help relieve some of that strain on our brains. So now we understand the neurological price that we pay when we try to navigate human dynamics by sheer guesswork. Let's look at the map that simplifies it all, the framework. Think of the Jigsaw Discovery Behavioural Framework not as a way to put people into boxes, but rather as a lens to help you understand how individuals naturally process information, how they manage their time, communicate, and react to workplace situations. It helps to break down the messy complexity of being human into a visual framework of human behaviour. And as a manager, this framework helps us to master three critical stages. First, self-awareness, knowing our own natural default settings. Then learning how to read the behaviours, communications of our team members. And thirdly, it enables us to develop that golden skill of intentionally shifting our approach so our messages land effectively with each and every team member. So let's take a look at the 4 fundamental behavioural preferences that make up the framework on your screen. There are 4 colours, each representing a different style of processing the workplace environment, of communicating, preferred ways of working. So if we start by looking at the top left jigsaw piece, the red. This style is fast-paced, highly assertive, intensely outcome-focused. People with a strong red preference look at a project and ask, what does this achieve? How fast can we get it done? They appreciate brief, bottom-line summaries and quick action. If we move to the top right, our creative yellow. This is also a fast-paced style, but its core focus is on opportunities and possibilities, ideas, creativity. A strong yellow preference brings energy and enthusiasm, a love for brainstorming possibilities and ideas. And they ask the kind of questions about who's involved, what new ideas can we explore, how can we build on this idea. By dropping down to the bottom right, we come to our green. Now this style operates at a more thoughtful pace, focusing heavily on team harmony, support, collaboration. They are the bedrock of team cohesion, asking, how does this change affect our people? How can we support each other through it? And finally, the bottom left jigsaw piece, our organised blue. This style is measured, objective, process-driven. A strong blue preference values data, logic and precision. They look at the situation and ask, what's the historical data? Where is the evidence? What is the exact process that we are following? Now that we've laid out the framework of the 4 fundamental jigsaw preferences, it's time to think about your preference. And I want you to look closely at the 4 profiles displayed on the screen. Remember our neuroscience check-in. Your natural behavioural style is your comfort zone. It's the path of least resistance, where your brain processes interactions smoothly, using very little metabolic energy. Managing a style that is completely opposite to yours is what forces your brain into that high energy prefrontal cortex zone that is draining of your cognitive battery and contributing directly to declining engagement. So I have a 2-part challenge for you. First, I want you to identify your natural default, the behavioural preference that feels like your automatic pilot. And then I want you to identify your prefrontal cortex drain, the behavioural preference that takes the most intentional effort for you to manage, to communicate with, or lead. I just want you to stop the recording there and take a moment just to identify those for yourself. So here's the so what. When we get busy, stressed, under pressure, our brain defaults to self-protection. We stop trying to flex our behaviours and we retreat completely into our natural style. So if we are a blue default manager, under stress, you're likely to double down on details, spreadsheets, processes. If you're a red default manager, under stress. You're likely to double down on deadlines, pressures, direct commands. But if your team members are green or yellow preferences, then your self-protection behaviours to them look more like micromanagement, lack of empathy, or a total disregard for the human element. So they disengage because they feel invisible. You disengage because your brain is exhausted from trying to force round pegs into square technical holes. But what happens, let's say, with a manager is a green default, hits that high stress? Well, in their mind, their primary intent is to protect team harmony, to maintain psychological safety, ensure nobody gets burnt out. So under pressure, they're likely to double down on consensus seeking, conflict avoidance. They'll stall on making those hard decisions because they're waiting to get that 100% buy-in from all team members. They retreat into long, gentle discussions. They soft pedal on critical feedback because their brain interprets direct pushback as a social threat. So how does that actually land with an action red or an organised blue colleague? Well, to the action red, who's wired for immediate execution, bottom line impact, this green behaviour is perceived as indecisive, weakness, stalling. The red thinks, stop talking about how everyone feels and just make the call. Just do it. To the blue, who wants structure, clear rules, objective accountability, the green manager looks disorganised, overly permissive, and lacking rigour. The blue thinks, you're letting poor performance slide because you're too afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation. So let's look at the creative yellow default. When the yellow default manager gets stressed, their automatic brain response is to seek dynamic new solutions, keep morale high, talk things through. So under pressure, they double down on that high energy idea creation, verbal processing. Instead of slowing down to analyse why a system is failing, a yellow manager starts throwing out 5 brand new unvetted ideas, perhaps in the middle of a crisis meeting. They pivot rapidly to try to rally the team with upbeat enthusiasm and process their thoughts out loud. So, to the organised blue, who needs that structured data, logic, methodical execution, this high energy brainstorming under pressure feels like chaotic distraction, a lack of focus, something that's unreliable. And the blue thinks, we haven't even fixed problem A, and you're dragging us into a new, shiny new distraction B without any real evidence or data. To the red, who wants that concise, actionable plan, the yellow manager's out loud processing is perceived as fluff, lack of discipline, wasting valuable time. The red thinks, just cut the pep talk and give me the tactical, strategic plan. So notice here what is happening across the 4 quadrants, whether you are red, yellow, green or blue. Your intent under stress is always self-protection or problem solving. That's our natural intent, our natural default. It's part of our survival system. But without behavioural agility, then your default behaviour can become a blind spot. Red default, under stress, looks like aggression or control. Blue default looks like micromanagement or cold detachment. Green default, indecision or avoidance. And yellow default, chaos or lack of focus. And this is why manager engagement declines across the board, because we burn through our cognitive energy reacting to these misperceptions rather than understanding the behaviours driving them. And that moment we learn to spot these defaults in yourself and flex your style to match what the situation and the person actually needs, the friction starts to disappear. So we've unpicked the neuroscience of why people management feels so cognitive heavy. And we've looked at how our stress defaults can unintentionally build walls between us and our teams. So now let's turn theory into muscle memory. And how do we take the Jigsaw discovery framework and apply it to an actual workplace scenario that every single manager encounters at some point? So you have a team member who is naturally quiet, methodical, normally a high performer. But over the past 3 or 4 weeks, they've started missing project deadlines, milestones. During team meetings, they're pulling back, staying quiet, contributing far less than usual. So, what happens when an accidental manager responds using their automatic technical default? So, let's say your organised default is blue or it's an action red, then your automatic brain reaction is going to be task focused. You open up your project tracker or your Jira board. You send a direct email saying, I noticed deliverables X and Y are overdue. I need an updated status report by 3 p.m. today. You treat the missed deadline as purely operational or a systematic defect, something that needs correcting. But how then does that land with team members? What is happening inside the team member's brain? Well, because their behavioural style or emotional state hasn't been considered, that direct information, metrics driven message is processed by their brain as a social threat. Their amygdala fires up. They feel cornered, judged, or micromanaged. And instead of opening up about why they're struggling, they retreat further into their shell. Or at best, they give you a surface level excuse, something that's just going to end the interaction. And you haven't really fixed the performance issue. All you've actually done is increase the tension. So let's take a moment and just think about what if, instead of reacting on our technical reaction, we actually use the behavioural flex approach. So first of all, we'd stop and pause for 2 or 3 seconds to actually think about the person. We'd start to recognise that this team member is a strong or has a strong preference for red, yellow, green, blue. Let's say they're green. Then green, will value psychological safety. They'll value having a more clear structure, support mechanism, and actually recognition for their own personal situation and their values. So your approach as manager, you'd start first of all with that 2 or 3 minute pause. Then we'd schedule a short one-to-one that actually signals support, not interrogation. So we might say something along the lines of, I notice we've had a busy few weeks. Let's grab 10 minutes today. No dashboard, no status reviews, just a quick catch up on how you're finding things. How are things going with you? And then you'd flex your communication. So again, thinking about that green. We'd lead with empathy. We'd listen actively. We'd say things like, how are you feeling about the volume of work on your plate right now? What support can I offer? What can we deprioritize or reassign to give you some breathing space, to give you some mental capacity, some mental space? And by flexing your approach, you shift the dynamic from interrogation to collaboration. You save your own prefrontal cortex from an exhausting confrontation and communication, and you help the team member move back into that high performance zone without damaging trust. So let's put this kind of into practice. I want you to think of a team member or a colleague that you need to have a conversation with. Someone whose behavioural preference is opposite to yours. And I want you to think about just one thing that you will do, one small flex that you will make in your next interaction with them. So it may be you say to yourself, well, actually, I'm a red manager by default, and I have to have a conversation with a green team member. So I'm going to start our one-to-one by asking about their week instead of diving straight into the project update. Or you may have identified yourself as a yellow manager. So you're having a conversation with a blue team member. So your flex that you've identified is that you're going to send them some information 24 hours in advance of the meeting so they know exactly what to expect. You're not springing anything on them. So please just kind of pause for a moment and just consider that one single shift. That single intentional shift that you've thought about is what turns an expert who manages tasks into a leader who inspires people. Now we're moving from that kind of self-awareness into adaptation. This is a quick map, framework, a quick guide for meeting others where they are at. So if someone has an action red preference, then be confident, be direct, factual, outcome focused. For a creative yellow, bring energy, curiosity, open questions. Let them explore possibility and talk things through. For a green, create safety first. Be warm, listen actively, and show that their views are valued. And for the blue, slow down the pace, be logical, provide detail. Give them space for processing the conversation and co prepared. The key point here is it's not about changing who we are. All we're doing is flexing how we communicate so the other person can hear us more effectively. So, as you step back into your day to day, I want to leave you with 3 simple steps on your leadership roadmap. The first one is to, before reacting, whether that's in a one-to-one or a team catch-up, stop, pause for 3 seconds and ask yourself, am I reacting on autopilot from my technical default? Or am I actually observing the behavioural needs, considering the person or people in front of me? I want you to pick a conversation that you're going to have this week where you intentionally adapt your pace or priority to match the other person's style. And I want you to use the Jigsaw framework to remove some of the guesswork from those future human interactions, which will save your mental energy for that strategic, high value leadership. Now, today we only had time to do an overview and give you a taster of what is possible if you use the Jigsaw Discovery tool and behavioural profile. In our workshops, or if you become a certified practitioner of the Jigsaw Discovery tool, the first step on the road from expert to leader is to complete a Jigsaw profile and create your own personal behavioural map. So thank you for joining us today and for your participation. Please, if anybody does want to dive deeper into mapping your team's behavioural preferences or bringing Jigsaw into your organisation, then please visit our website or reach out directly. So all that remains is for me to say, stop managing by accident, start leading by design. Thank you.